Hello and welcome to the show. Brian Lilley is my guest for this half hour. He is a columnist with the Toronto Sun. He writes a number of articles on Substack and other things. He has been a thorn in the side of many pompous politicians for a long, long time, and he has accomplished a lot of things. So welcome to the show. I want to put the question to you. Since Carney makes himself the subject of almost every story about government in Canada, whether it be provincial or the federal government, or many stories around the world, let's talk about Carney. He likes to be the subject of attention. We'll make him the subject of attention. We'll get to corruption. But the latest news is that he has hired an American to run his office.
This is a bizarre thing.
So that's it. You start off bizarre. It is bizarre.
It's absolutely bizarre that there's a woman working in his office named Maya Johnson. And nobody I know knew that Maya Johnson was working in this office, including people that work with the government on the Canada-US file, because that, until recently, was her job. Senior advisor on Canada-US relations. Wait a minute, we've hired an American Democrat who worked on Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign.
The losing.
Who, with Michael Bloomberg, tried to take over Joe Biden's 2020 campaign and run it for them. And then has been a longtime donor to Democrats, including Hillary Clinton's campaign, Biden's campaign, Kamala Harris's campaign. This is who's advising Mark Carney on how to deal with Donald Trump. But she went from being just the advisor on Canada-US relations, who, by the way, was fined by the ethics commissioner for not completing the paperwork in time. She went from being just the advisor on that to now she is chief operating officer. Nobody knows much about her.
That in the Prime Minister's office, to my knowledge.
I've never heard of it. I mean, until maybe the 1980s, we didn't even have the title Chief of Staff. There was Principal Secretary, but not Chief of Staff.
There was a Director of Operations in the 80s. But I know that. I wasn't.
Oh, you wasn't. Now we've got this woman who, what is she, on a temporary foreign work permit, who is the Chief Operating Officer. Running the government of Canada is a Democrat operative. She'll be in the job until she leaves to go and run the next, work on the next presidential campaign.
Yeah. This is totally bizarre. But, so aside from that, and she's going to make a big difference, I'm sure, maybe not for the better.
Well, I would say the evidence would suggest she hasn't been giving good advice on Canada-US relations. The tariffs are up. The Kuzma deal did not get the extension that we wanted, and the Gordie Howe Bridge deal kind of sucks.
Well, how do you know it sucks? Because we're being told that we aren't getting the money that we thought for payback, but we haven't seen the agreement. Carney does this. He has this security agreement with China. We haven't seen it. The public hasn't seen it. This deal with Gordie Howe Bridge, have you seen it?
No.
You've heard reports about it, what the government wants you to know.
That's all that we know. I called someone who knows this issue well, worked on getting the bridge built, was instrumental in that happening. And I said, well, what can you tell me? And they said, nothing. Because we don't know anything. And so these are people who should be in the know. Again, like back to this Maya Johnson, people who should know about that there's a senior advisor on Canada-US relations. People who are working on the Kuzma file know nothing about it. People working on the Gordie Howe Bridge file don't know what's in the deal.
So is this contrary from our Prime Minister's advice a year ago? Elbows up. I'm going to be elbows up with the states when he's getting somebody. She is a Democrat, and that's not going to please Trump at all. Is this a negative thing as far as our trade talks when we have somebody in Washington dealing with this? She's the same person who advised Trudeau to bring in the Emergencies Act, when she was the Privy Council.
You're talking about Janice Charette. Look,
yes.
I know a lot of people have issues with Janice Charette over the Emergencies Act, but I know an awful lot of conservatives who worked with her when she was in Stephen Harper's. She was clerk of the Privy Council there.
You're not always good, though. She had. Where's our agreement?
She did just get there. We had
she's been there for 6 months.
We had Kristen Hillman in there for ages.
Well, she's a bureaucrat.
Who did not do a good job, who alienated. She was our ambassador for years leading up to Trump being reelected. Did nothing to work towards getting to know any Republicans because she was all in on Biden, was sure Biden was going to win. As an ambassador, that's not your job. Your job is to say, okay, I need to know everyone because I have to deal with everyone. Right. And by the time she decided she wanted to talk to Republicans, they didn't want to talk to her because they said, well, where were you 6 months ago?
So then the point still is the agreement has run out, and I know you know this, so we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Brian Lilley about the future of trade with the United States. It's not going to be elbows up. Right back after this. And we're back with Brian Lilley from the Toronto Sun, and he writes everywhere else as well. He knows the inside track. Give me the inside track. Give Canadians the inside track of why we don't have an agreement for trade with the United States, and as a result of non-agreement, what's going to happen to trade with the United States?
So CUSMA is still in effect, and
Yes,
it continues
10 years.
for 10 more years. So
Yes.
when we originally signed it, 16-year deal had to be reviewed on the 6th anniversary, which was this past July 1st. Canada and Mexico both said, we want to renew it for another 16 years. That was option number one. Option number two was any party could say 6 months and I'm done.
Yep.
I'm out of here. And option number three was it continues for the remaining 10 years, but
Then it's over.
it's annual reviews, which of course leads to a lot of uncertainty. But why didn't we get the option number one that we wanted? Why haven't we gotten rid of the tariffs or lowered them at the least? Well, part of it, of course, is Donald Trump. He initiated this, and he's difficult to deal with. We know that.
But we have Canadian companies moving to the States because of the uncertainty.
Yes, but so let me explain that, yes, Trump is major factor. He started it. He continues to aggravate things, but we have been our own worst enemy at times. So in June of 2025,
Right.
talks had started to come together and they were going well. And the Americans said to us, hey, you've got this digital services tax coming into
Whoa.
effect on, I think it was June 30th. And that was going to cost American tech companies billions of dollars in back payments because we were making the tax retroactive and they were going to have to pay billions. The Biden administration was against this. Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate are against it. And of course, the Trump administration is against it. They said to us, can you just pause that tax while we continue these negotiations? And our team said, no, we're going ahead with it.
We like that Trudeau stuff.
The tax was actually part of the negotiations. And they said, can you pause it? We said no. So on Friday, 5 or 6 p.m., Donald Trump announced all trade talks with Canada are canceled. And we said, we're still going ahead with the tax. 11:45 on Sunday night, the day before the tax is supposed to come in, 15 minutes before. We didn't just pause it. We announced we were rescinding it. We could have used it as a negotiating tactic. Then we fast forward to October.
So we got rid of it for no reason.
Yeah, we could have used it as a negotiating tool.
To my point I made a few minutes ago, it seems like we're a bunch of bumbleheads.
Wait till I tell you about October. Remember, Mark Carney goes to the White House for his second meeting. They have a nice meeting in public. Nothing bad happens. He doesn't get
Trump's shoes are shined.
He doesn't get Zelensky'd in that meeting in the Oval
That's
Office.
Good point.
And then they go and they have a nice lunch. And I've talked to people who are in the meeting. They have a nice lunch. Trump turns to Lutnick and Greer and says, you know what? I like this guy. Let's get him a deal. That's October 7th. Fast forward towards the end of October. You've heard that it was Doug Ford's ad. And maybe it was a factor. But on the Tuesday of that week, Donald Trump is asked about it. And he says, oh, that's a good ad. If I was Canadian, I'd take out the same ad. On Thursday, he cancels. What happened in between? We screwed up. GM had said they were stopping the production of the Bright Drop electric delivery vehicles in Ingersoll, Ontario. Why? Because no one's buying them. Not even Canada Post was buying them. They couldn't sell. They had a good run. They've got to pause production.
And Ingersoll is closed.
And Stellantis announced that the Jeep Compass would be produced in Indiana.
Right.
It was never produced in Brampton, but the Carney government made it sound like they were moving production from Brampton, Ontario to Indiana. Well, Melanie Joly threatens to sue both companies. She slaps more duties on their imports into Canada and causes all kinds of problems. Those companies tell the White House what's happening, and that is why Trump canceled the talks.
No, because I understand that Trump actually admires Ford. They're sort of like two peas in a pod. I mean, Ford is not as mercurial. He's not vulgar, but
that has changed. That has changed. And
but they no longer like each other?
No, neither one. And Doug Ford gets under the American skin, and that booze ban is a huge irritant.
Kentucky bourbon.
So, look, is Ford's booze ban effective at getting their attention? Yes.
Yes.
Has it been an effective tool? Hasn't been used. We're not playing our cards right. when it comes to the negotiations. We do have a lot of what the United States wants, but Carney is trying to wait out until the midterms, hoping the Democrats win. Good chunk of the Democrat Party doesn't like Kuzma. Kamala Harris voted against it. The Democratic Socialists of America, that's where all the action and excitement is in that party. And they hate these free trade deals and want to do away with them. So, like, who's advising them? Oh, right. The woman we were talking about earlier.
I was just going to say, is that why Carney hired this Democrat to run the PMO?
I mean, it harkens back to, remember, the embassy in the U.S. hired a Democrat firm to teach them how to speak to Republicans. You know, you could ask a Republican for some advice. You could ask Canadians who understand American politics for some advice.
Doesn't get better than that. We're going to take a quick break. Back with Brian Lilley and all of his insights, which are considerable. And we're back with Brian Lilley of The Sun, who has always the inside information before some of the politicians actually have it. We were just talking about the failure of the Canadian government with negotiations with the United States. Although Carney, at the start, ages ago, he was a tough negotiator, and he said before that, well, I know Trump, and we can negotiate. We're going to have a deal. So he's failed on that. He has failed on lowering the cost of living in Canada. And now many people say he is corrupt. Where does that leave Carney, our wonderful PM? I mean, he's more mature than Trudeau, which is why people like him for that.
I think it's, we don't have the evidence to say he's corrupt. I know a lot of people look at the conflicts of interest with Brookfield and have a lot of questions.
But wait a second.
Let me finish.
No, I'll let you finish, but then go ahead.
Well, we don't have enough evidence to say that, there is corruption with Brookfield or in his holdings. And the whole condo deal, like the Gordie Howe deal, we don't have the details of.
No, that's absolutely true. But the details I have is that the Condo King in Vancouver gave a fundraiser, at least, well, there's a few of them, won $25,000 a plate. That's a very pricey fundraiser to our Minister of Housing when he was a mayor. The failed mayor of the city of Vancouver, and then failed Minister of Housing. He's the guy that brought this deal in, because when it came out and reporters were asking questions about it, the Prime Minister said, well, I guess we didn't present this in the right way.
Yeah.
So the Prime Minister wasn't full behind it. It was this minister. And if you have corrupt ministers, you're corrupt. That was a corrupt deal, in my view, to give this company and these condos a bailout.
I'm waiting to see the details.
I'm highly
suspicious.
I'm not saying Brookfield. No, well, what I know, though, is that when you're paying $25,000 a plate for a fundraiser, and I've done a lot of fundraisers.
But that was years ago. And federally, I know that those same guys held fundraisers for Carney at $1,700 a ticket.
Relatively small.
But you'll find many of those same people on the Conservative Party donor rolls as well.
Of course.
Because developers donate to, any party that can win. That not necessarily the NDP.
They're picking the winners, but $25,000 a plate to the same guy who then gives you a bailout, that smells.
So I'm hearing, Carney saying that the developers won't sell at a loss. David Eby is saying they're going to sell at a significant loss. People in the business community who are trying to work on this are telling me they're taking a massive haircut. Everyone's contradicting each other on this housing deal. I think they announced it before it was ready because they needed an excuse for Carney to go to Vancouver to go watch Canada play in the World Cup.
If you have a minister, you're Prime Minister, Brian Lilley, and you have a minister who, one, was a failed mayor, two, hasn't done anything Minister of Housing as a success, and three, has accepted a whack-a-dough from the same people that you're now bailing out to the tune of billions of dollars, would you not fire that minister for incompetence, if not for being,
I wouldn't have hired him. Let's put it that way.
He's there, though. He's been there for 16 months, Brian.
I know, but I never would have recruited him. I wouldn't have signed his nomination papers. I wouldn't have had him as a candidate.
Well, this just shows why you are a good commentator, because you won't answer my question as to where you would fire him. You're changing it around, saying, well, I would have hired him in the first place.
Yeah, I never would have given them the job, so I wouldn't have to fire him.
But maybe it was some of these Americans in the PMO who said, hire this guy.
He should not be in that job. Mark Carney, though, should he get rid of a bunch of these ministers? Yeah. Who's he going to replace them with? It brings me back to the famous quip from Sir John A. Macdonald. You want me to have a better cabinet? Send me better wood. The the bench strength for the Liberals is not very good at the moment. You've got a bunch of Trudeau retreads. You've got people like Lena Diab, who was not a Trudeau retread, brought in to handle immigration. She had done that file when she was in the provincial government in Nova Scotia, and you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know that she had a clue how the system works. She can't answer basic questions. Minister Andesangri in public safety has also been a disaster. There are a lot of people you would fire, but who do you replace them with? Carney does not have a good team.
You're going to have to bring in some backbenchers, and you're going to have some strength in deputies.
The thing that Carney would have liked to have an early election for, instead of getting his manufactured majority, would have been so that he could have put in decent candidates that he recruited, rather than dealing with the Trudeau mob that is as weak as they are.
But that brings us back to something problem with the Liberal Party, because the party is no longer really in existence, and it can't recruit people or attract people. But before you contradict me on that one, we're going to take a quick break. Back with more Brian Lilley. And we're back with the lively Brian Lilley. And just before the break, he was talking about the fact that the Minister of Immigration really has no clue of what's going on. Let's just talk about immigration and talk about the society that Trudeau brought in with the advice of his really, really smart outsiders, saying more immigration and more diversity, which meant that you were not going to be integrated into Canadian society. And a lot of people point to the problems we have on the streets now is that people come to Canada and they no longer want to be Canadian. Well, your parents, I believe, were immigrants to Canada. Yeah. And so were mine. But they want to become Canadian.
My parents wouldn't let me play soccer when I was little. I was put into t-ball and hockey because they wanted me to be Canadian. I still played hockey, found t-ball dreadfully boring, and started playing soccer in the summer. But you know, the fact is, they broke the immigration system, which had been highly successful under previous Liberal governments and under the Harper government at bringing in large numbers of people, but also calling for a certain degree of assimilation, which doesn't mean you wipe yourself away and you're suddenly wearing lumberjackets every day, and but there is an assimilation into the society.
No, but not when you're post-nationalistic.
The Trudeau Liberals wanted to get rid of that. They didn't like that. They didn't like the citizenship guide that the Conservatives have put in that was very patriotic. Yeah. And that's the most immigrants that I know end up coming here and wanting to be patriotic. They come to Canada for a reason, and then they're told
to get rid of the problems for the country they left.
And then they're told, you came to a horrible place and we're awful, genocidal, post-national state. That's not why. That's not why they come here. Yep. But we brought in more people than we could absorb. Justin Trudeau's words, April 1st or 2nd, 2024. He's finally asked about it, and he said, yes, we're bringing in people faster than we can absorb them. That had implications for the housing crisis that we're in, housing unaffordability. You're bringing in, at one point, millions of people a year between all the different strands. You had permanent residents, you had temporary foreign workers, you had international students. It was about 2 million that you're bringing in, and you're not adding to the housing stock. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to have a housing shortage. Prices are going to go up, whether for purchasing or renting. And that was a direct result of that. Was it the only factor? No, but it's one of the biggest ones. Had impacts on our social services, on our healthcare. We now are at the point, Stephen, where we've got 4 million people who were here on temporary visas who were supposed to leave. The government has no idea.
We don't know where they are.
Government has no plan to make sure that they leave. The government has no plan to follow up. And so what's going to happen? Well, we just had an interesting case in Ontario that I believe has implications for the whole country. And that is an Ontario tribunal said that a guy who was here illegally, came on a work visa, stayed for years working under the table after his visa expired, he's eligible for welfare. And you don't think that's going to happen elsewhere? You've also got schools like York University and Toronto Metropolitan coming out with sanctuary scholar programs, meaning that if you have questionable immigration status, I forget the term they use, precarious immigration status, you just tell them and you can get domestic tuition rates. Now, you can't get government loans because you've got to show that you have a legal right to reside here, but they will give you that. There's all these things happening across the country with sanctuary cities and government services being offered to people that shouldn't be here.
And tribunals making silly decisions. So go back to another point then. and you've pointed this out many times, are we run by the elected politicians we elect to run us, or are we run by appointees and academics who constantly screw things up?
So, unfortunately, we've handed off too much authority to arm's length groups. I hate arm's length groups.
Yes.
Because we don't elect them, we elect the politicians. I'm going to say it's mostly a problem of liberals, because liberals love arm's length groups because then they get the technocratic government they want, but conservatives have done it at times as well. And it becomes, well, we're not involved. We're taking the politics out of it. Well, no, because when you know what hits the fan, we have to blame someone, and it's the politician that wears it. So the politician should have a say in how these things operate. Doug Ford's fixing the welfare thing. He's going to fix that.
Yeah, no, that drove him crazy, rightly so. But you know what? So often we have no accountability because ministers say, "Oh, it's a bunch of people that were appointed out there. They're the technocrats, they're the ones that know what they're doing, and we can't do anything about it."
Yeah,
Canadians,
baloney.
baloney.
Politician has to make the decision, and they have to own it and live with it.
Oh, gosh, that is so smart. Brian Lilley, thank you very much for coming on. I think it's probably the best way a show has ever been ended with a guest saying baloney about irresponsible politicians. Thanks again. Stay tuned.